Hello again, class. This is Miss Whitley, your instructor, and today I want to talk to you about in-text citations and how to quote and how to paraphrase. So what you're looking at here is a sample essay I've kind of come up with, and I'm going to use it to show you what quoting and summarizing look like in a real essay itself. So over here on the right, I just have some basic formats for you, just things you need to be aware of. So the basic format for a citation, which is what we do to give credit, right, to the author of the article that we're quoting from or paraphrasing from, is really simple. Really, all you need is the author's last name and the year it was published. And so you'll notice I have my example down here, Jones, 2014. There are two variations. So the most two common variations on that is that sometimes you may not know the author's name. And so if you don't have the author's name, you want to put, like we have here for number 2, the title of the article and then the year published. So in our second example, it says Forensic Accountant, 2013. That is our example there. And then for number 3, the most common variant is that sometimes we don't know the date something was published. And so in that case, we put N period, D period, where the date should go. So in our example number 3 down here, it looks like Jones, comma, and then N period, D period. And you can combine those, right? You can combine 2 and 3. So this could be Forensic Accountant, comma, N period, D period. And those are really the major variations. The only difference is that, so when you're paraphrasing, it looks like this, and the only thing we add when we're quoting directly is we add the page number. So let's take a look at what this looks like in an essay. So I have here the basic APA format that's offered to you in the template that I put on the instructor page. Hopefully by now you're either using the template or you've figured out how to do this and how to make the cover head and the cover page on your own. So down here for page 2. So just some basic formatting things. You know, your introduction should always go first. And in your introduction, it's pretty standard not to quote or to paraphrase anything, because the point of an introduction is to introduce the essay, right? It's not to give all your information. That's for the essay itself. So down here in your second paragraph, this is where you start the body of your essay, and so this is where you might want to start quoting or paraphrasing things. And now some of you were using headers, so I thought I would show you what that looked like. If you do want to break your essay into sections, this is how it should happen. You should always have your title first and then your introduction. And then if you want to put headings, they would only go in the body of the essay. And so you would center them and bold them. And like for here, I have one for every paragraph. You can do that, or every section. And notice that there's not a new heading before the conclusion. So don't go crazy with headings, okay? So let's look at what a typical citation looks like. So if you have a lot of information that you want to convey to your reader, it's best to put it in your own words. And when you're putting in things in your own words, we call that summarizing or paraphrasing, and you simply want to actually make it sound like you. Be careful not to just change a word here or there or put in a couple synonyms. That is not acceptable, and that's plagiarism, and you want to avoid that. So I advise you to, when you're actually getting ready to write, read the section that you want to summarize or paraphrase and then turn it over, so that when you are doing the summary or the paraphrase, you're not actually looking at the original source. And then just talk like you're telling it to somebody. You know, pretend you're telling your friend about what you learned and put that in the essay, and then you'll be good to go. That'll make you sound like you, and it'll avoid any plagiarism issue. When you get to the end of the section that you paraphrase, so for example here, all of this I'm paraphrasing from the Diana Hacker handbook. And so afterwards, when I'm done with the section that I'm paraphrasing, I simply put in parentheses, I put the author's last name here, the comma, and the year. So you'll notice that this matches citation style number 1 because we have the author and we have the page number. And then the punctuation goes after the parenthesis there at the end. So not after the end of your sentence, but after your citation, because you want to include the citation into the sentence itself. So that's pretty easy, right? When you're quoting directly and you're taking something word for word from your source, that's awesome too. You want to do it a minimum times and you want to keep it small, right? You don't want to quote more than a sentence or two maximum. And you want to make sure that you are using the best quote and the one that's going to be the strongest for your essay. Please remember that, quotes should not be the first or second sentence in a paragraph. They should also not be the last sentence in a paragraph. And that's mostly because a paragraph in an essay needs to be your words supported with some quotes and some paraphrases, but it needs to be 90% you, 10% someone else. So use the quotes, keep them small, and just to support it. So here's an example of one way to quote. This is what we call using a signal phrase. So let's say I want to name the author in this sentence, and so I want to say, for example, Diana Hacker, who's the author of the handbook that you guys have access to, suggests that you can often integrate language from a source into your own structure. Remember that our elements for the citation are the author's last name and the year, and those always need to go together. So if I name the author in the sentence here, I have to put the year in parentheses immediately following it. Now for a quote, we also mentioned that you also have to add the page number, so you would simply pop that in here at the end with a P and a period and then the number for the page. So that's what we call using a signal phrase, and that means you've named the author in the sentence. So just remember, if you name the author in the sentence, the year needs to go after it in parentheses, like so. Oftentimes you'll find that you don't name the author in the sentence and you just give your quote and leave the citation at the end like normal. So in that case, we have just our normal citation here. Still Hacker, still 2012, the year, but now I've just popped in P period and the number for the page. And then notice that my period is still after the parenthesis. And notice that for a direct quote, I've got to put quotation marks around what I quote. But I do not have to quote a whole sentence. It doesn't have to be an entire sentence. And I can use things like the ellipsis to take out some words and to make their quote fit a little better into my paragraph. Now notice in this entire big paragraph, I only used 2 quotes. That's common. 2 quotes is actually a lot for a paragraph. So as you're building your essay and as you're building this project, I want you to think back and think, where would a quote be the best use and have the biggest impact? And that's where you want to use it, because you want to make sure that when you quote, that you are quoting for impact and that you're quoting in the middle of your paragraph, and afterwards you need to explain that quote and you need to talk about it. Why is it there? Why is it important? What did you think about it? Why did it catch your eye as something to put in your paper? So don't just pop in a quote and assume that the quote is going to explain everything for your reader, because it's not, right? You need to put in the quote and then you need to talk about it and tell us why and explain it. One little extra thing to mention here with quoting is that a lot of times you guys are going to be using online resources, and so you may not have a page number. Ideally, without a page number, what you're going to use instead is the paragraph number from the page that you found it. So I highlighted it here down at the bottom. And it just looks like, instead of P period, it would look like PARA period for paragraph. And then you would simply count down the paragraphs on the page. I hope this has been helpful. Stay tuned and I will show you how to do reference pages.